So I walked out of my church 10 years ago, a little bit more than 10 years ago. And I did so in the middle of a storm of a lot of events surrounding my community. Two important things here. The two H's, I call them, hue and history. Hue and history. Living in this country and having the church experience while having this hue and the history that goes along with the church and consequently with the country as well, is not for the faint of heart. You're still sitting in your church and you look like me. And the question is why? 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 So when I walked out of my church, it was during the time when Trayvon Martin was chased down, basically harassed and then killed by George Zimmerman. The pastor of this Foursquare Church here in the Bay Area, California, Northern California, very begrudgingly got up and said something to the church and addressed the situation. His words were, something happened in the news, and I guess I have to say something about it. I'm going to give you a couple of reasons, a few reasons why you need to simply get up and walk out and never look back. From any predominantly Caucasian evangelical Christian church. Now, just so we're clear, my issue is not with Caucasian people as a whole. The evangelical church here in America is made up primarily of Caucasian, right-leaning, from a political standpoint, people, along with the religious. There has been an amalgamation between the politics and the religion. Plain and simple. There's no other way to put it. The politics is the religion. The politics drive the religion. There is an undercurrent, a crippling undercurrent of white supremacy within the evangelical church. And it is expressed explicitly in words often, i.e. the Joel Webbin types, and some of these other quote unquote hate pastors, which I think is a fair label. And it's also implied by action or lack of action, as I just mentioned to you. The Trayvon Martin, the Tamir Rice tragedies hit the African-American community very hard. It was devastating for us because when we look at Tamir Rice or we looked at Trayvon Martin, we could see ourselves, we could see our nephews, we could see our sons, our godsons, our grandsons. We could see the kid next door. And it was ho-hum, by and large, for the church. And I'm just going to be plain and raw here. It's ho-hum, by and large, for the most part. Reason number one that you should leave the church that you're in is if the hurts that happen within your community that affect your people is not important to them. And they make it plain and obviously so by not addressing things, by not speaking to your concerns, not being empathetic, not being compassionate. You should go. This makes me think about the scale of worth that the author James Baldwin often talked about. This is something that's throughout America. It's just well known. They have a low sense of worth for us. The same people that took the book and used it as a tool to enslave our minds and our souls, as if they have the keys to the kingdom of heaven and they have control over who gets in and who doesn't come in. They definitely think that they can put people in heaven, i.e. the guy that was deleted. They just have him in the gates of heaven, even though he was a very hateful and wicked and disgusting human being. They have him somehow in the gates of heaven. Make it make sense. That's reason number one. There has to be a high scale of worth. You have to have equal standing. You have to be viewed as a fellow believer and a fellow human being. It's crazy that I have to say that, but a fellow human being created in the image of the invisible creator. No one's asking for anything more. So I left there because of the attitude, in part because of the attitude toward this situation. Reason number 2, that you should not, if you share my hue, continue to sit inside of an evangelical, predominantly Caucasian, right-leaning church. Is if you have to meet some type of extra criteria in order to be an approved member. Case in point, don't know the guy's name, probably wouldn't repeat it anyway, but he had a video, 2 pastors, and they're talking. And the guy says, black people we commit deletions. We delete people at a higher rate than any other group. We also SA other people at a higher group. We actually roam the streets looking for someone to harm. That's a lie. If you want to make that statement, though it's not true, were it true, you and your ancestors have the teacher's manual. You have the teacher's manual. Come on, buck breaking. You believed us to be less than human and less than worth base human value, but you couldn't keep your hands off of our women. That's why most people who walk around the country that shares my hue, we're carrying 25, 26, 27, 30% European ancestry. Irish. Whole lot of Irish here that I didn't ask for. But I'm here. Thank God I breathe, therefore I am. Yeah. It's out of control. It's crazy. Third and final reason that you should not sit inside of a primarily evangelical right-leaning church if you share my hue is because they have become the cult of cosmetic surgery, cleavage, and crosses. Cleavage and crosses. They are most of them are people of platitudes. Christ is King, Jesus is Lord. Dust off, as for me and my house, every now and then we will serve the Lord. But yet you will call me that word as soon as you find out that I don't vote with you. As soon as you find out that I have an opinion. How do they say? Sing me to tears. Play that organ, play that guitar, but shut your mouth. We don't want to hear your viewpoint. We don't want to know where you stand on certain things. We don't need your opinion. You can be seen. You're tolerated. You're tolerated in these circles. I got tired of being tolerated. I'll add one bonus one because I said a few. Let's make it several reasons. Bonus reason number 4 is if you share scripture, share insight on scripture, and they believe that they, quote, have to fix what you did, because that's what happened at my last church as well, too, more than a decade ago. I walked out the door, as I said, and I'm in attendance in a different environment now, but I'm barely there. But that new environment that I'm in now is the only thing that kept me from coming home right here. As a matter of fact, you can hear my wind chimes in the background. It's nice, mellow, and quiet. The only other noise I hear are the hummingbirds fighting over the feeder in the background. But I have my Tanakh here, my quote-unquote Old Testament. And I have my nice Hebrew New Testament here, right? I shared insight, my viewpoint, to the best of what I believe that Christ was saying in Mark chapter 7 with a couple who were in their late 50s, early 60s at that time. They pushed me about a question about Mark chapter 7. They found out I had just come back from the Middle East, and they wanted to know what my take on it was. And I gave them a disclaimer. Hey, I'm not telling you what you have to do, but you've asked me, kind of hemmed me in at this church function. And I answered them, Jesus, Yeshua says, that what you eat doesn't make you unclean. It's what comes out of you that makes you unclean. And he's speaking in the context of the ritual of Netilat Yadayim, as it's called in the Jewish world, washing your hands before you eat. He's saying if you eat food that his Father commands and recognizes as food, if you eat that food with unclean hands, it's not going to make you dirty. The translators and them other folks decided to add, thus he declared all foods clean there. Peter obviously didn't get the memo. He was standing right there in the crowd, because in Acts chapter 10 and in Acts chapter 11, he makes it plain and clear that his dream was not about food. The dream was about people being considered unclean and unacceptable and not kosher, which is more of a Talmudic thing, and it's never been a part of the Hebrew Bible. So, yeah, they told me they had to fix what I did. And they had to set the older people back on the right track. Anyway, there are your 4 reasons why. If you share my hue and my history, if you have the same hue and the same history as me, go to where you're appreciated. Go to where you're valued. Go to where you're loved and where you'll be supported. That's it, and that's all. Misha yesh lo ozen yishama. He who has an ear, let him hear. Be brave. The door is right there. Just get up and take one step at a time. Come on, before you change your mind.